I was late for my son's Christmas dinner. As I slowly opened the front door, I heard him raising a toast and shouting, "Finally, a Christmas without the old man to ruin everything." I closed the door, crying, and left in silence. An hour later, my world turned to hell. My name is Elijah Sterling. Everyone calls me Eli. I'm 71 years old, retired after 42 years working as a federal customs agent. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, a small city nestled in the Appalachian Mountains. Here, the cold mountain wind cuts through even the strongest bones in the winter, and the summer heat makes you want to dive into the cool waters of the city pool. Everybody here knows everybody else by name, and elders like me are respected. Or at least, they ought to be. If you're enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. There's a new story here every single day. This old man genuinely appreciates every comment you leave. It feels like a hug from far away. I worked my whole life to provide comfort for my family. I got up at 5 in the morning, took 3 buses to the neighboring city where my office was, and didn't get back until the sun had set behind the horizon. My fingers were calloused from sealing so many documents. My eyes were tired from reviewing import and export paperwork. But I never complained, because every dollar was meant to build a future for my only son, Devin. Ever since my Grace passed away 20 years ago, he became my whole family. But it seems every sacrifice has its price. And sometimes the coin we're paid in is ingratitude. What I didn't know that Christmas was that the words I heard through that barely open door were going to change everything. It's funny how life can flip in a matter of seconds, during a simple toast raised with a glass of cheap bubbly. I was born right here in the Piedmont, the son of farm workers who came looking to try their luck in this region. My daddy, Walter Sterling, had hands the size of a dinner plate and a heart even bigger. It was him who taught me that a man who respects himself doesn't spare any effort when it comes to family. I grew up watching him rise before the sun to milk the cows, tend the corn and bean crops, and still find a way to be present for the important moments. Our house was simple, made of wood, with a porch where we'd sit after dinner to tell stories and listen to the radio. My mama, Ruth, made biscuits. You could smell 3 blocks away. It was in that environment of simplicity and love that I was raised, dreaming of one day having a city profession, as we called it, and I made it happen. After a lot of studying in the rural schoolhouse, where sometimes they didn't even have a teacher, I enrolled in a technical course in supply chain logistics down in Charlotte. I traveled 6 hours by bus every weekend to study. It was hard, but when I graduated and got the job as a federal customs agent, I saw that it had been worth it. It was a respected job that required knowing the laws and regulations of international trade. My day started early. I was up at 5. I did drink a strong black coffee while eating a sweet roll with jam that Grace had left ready for me on the table. I caught the first bus at 5:40 a.m., then 2 more, and got to the office in Greenville, South Carolina, at 7:30 on the dot. I spent the day surrounded by stacks of documents, checking invoices, verifying certificates of origin, filling out import declarations. It was a job that demanded attention. A stamp in the wrong place could delay a shipment for weeks. I met Grace at an annual church social back in 1975. She was an elementary school teacher. She had honey brown eyes and a smile that lit up the whole room. It was love at first sight, as they say. We courted for 8 months and got married in a simple ceremony at St. Michael's AME Zion Church. The reception was held in the fellowship hall, with barbecue and a local soul band. Our married life began in a rented apartment, small but cozy. Grace decorated every little corner with love, adding plants, colorful curtains, and photo frames with our pictures. She had a special gift for transforming any place into a home. And it was in that home, after 3 years of trying, that our Devon was born in 1979. Devon's birth was the happiest day of my life. When I held that tiny, crying boy in my arms, I promised myself that he would have everything I didn't. He would study at the best schools, have nice clothes, and never want for anything. Grace used to say, I spoiled the boy too much. But how could I not spoil my only son? It was for him that I worked double shifts. I did overtime and took extra weekend services, all to save money for his future. When Devon was 5 years old, I managed to buy our first house. It was a concrete slab construction with 3 bedrooms and a large yard where he could play. I financed it over 15 years, but I paid it off in 10, saving every dime, even on my morning coffee. The child grew up smart, earning good grades in school. Grace was in charge of his education with a firm hand. No skipping class, no getting into mischief. I was in charge of teaching him about life, fishing at the lake on Sundays, fixing broken things, respecting his elders. When Devon turned 15, I started dreaming about college. I opened a special savings account where I deposited a third of my paycheck every month. Sometimes I was hard up, but I'd think, it's for the boy's future. He always said he wanted to be an engineer, and I could already picture my son, degreed, respected, with a good job. It was around that time that things began to change. As Devon became a teenager, he started going out more and questioning the house rules. Just a stage, Grace would say. But I noticed something different in his eyes when he talked to me, a certain contempt, as if my stories were boring, my advice outdated, and my presence a nuisance. In 2003 came the hardest blow. Grace started having severe headaches. At first, we thought it was a migraine, something temporary. But when she collapsed in her classroom, we rushed her to the hospital and discovered a cerebral aneurysm. The doctors tried everything, but in 3 months, my Grace was gone. She left a world-sized hole in my chest. Devon was 24 then. He was finishing the college that I had paid for with so much sacrifice. I thought the pain of loss would bring us closer, but the opposite happened. He shut down. He was rarely home and hardly talked to me. 6 months later, he introduced me to Chandra, his girlfriend. They married civilly the following year. It was a simple ceremony, where I felt more like a guest than the groom's father. That's when I made a decision that changed everything. I offered them the house I had bought as an investment years ago. It was a good house in a nice part of town that I rented out to supplement my retirement. You can live there without paying rent, I told them. That way you can save up for your future. What I didn't tell them was that the deed was still in my name, a precaution life had taught me to take. The years went by. The grandkids arrived, first Zoe, then Caleb. I melted for them. I brought them gifts, told them stories, but visits became rarer and rarer. It was always the same excuse. Dad, we're busy. Dad, the kids have activities. Dad, it can't happen today. Christmas was the only occasion when I was certain I'd see my family together. That's why that Christmas of 2023 meant so much to me. December of 2023 arrived with that typical upstate heat. But I was too excited about Christmas to care. I had bought gifts for the grandkids, a bicycle for Caleb, and a tablet for Zoe, one of those modern ones that teenagers like today. But the most special gift was tucked away in an envelope, the deed to the house they lived in, which I was finally going to transfer into my grandson Caleb's name. You know, I always intended to leave something for their future. The house had gone up in value over the years, and my thought was I'm going to make sure my blood has a roof over their heads, even if this old man isn't around anymore. I chose to put it in Caleb's name because, being a minor, the administration would remain with his parents until he came of age. It was a gift that represented more than money. It was my entire life's effort. The week before Christmas, I was all over the city like a kid, buying the things for the dinner I'd bring. I felt I had to contribute, even though I knew Chandra made faces at my collard greens and sweet potato pie. "Old people food," she'd whisper, thinking I couldn't hear, but I'd pretend not to notice. In the end, what mattered was being together. I bought a new suit at Mr. Henderson's fine clothiers, a more modern cut that the salesman assured me would make me look younger. I even went to the barber and asked Mr. Nestor to tidy up my salt and pepper mustache. "I want to look sharp for Christmas," I told him, while he carefully passed the razor across my neck. That Christmas Eve, December 24th, I woke up early and got everything ready. The plan was for me to arrive around 7 in the evening. Devon's house was on the other side of the city, about 40 minutes by bus. I packed everything into 2 suitcases. In one, the food I'd prepared. In the other, the wrapped gifts, including that special envelope. That's when the unexpected happened. The bus I took broke down halfway there. Black smoke started pouring from the engine, and the driver told everyone to get off. "It'll be at least an hour before they send another one," he warned us. I looked at my watch. It was already 6:40. I tried to call Devon, but my old cell phone was out of battery. No problem, I thought. A half-hour delay isn't going to ruin the night. When I finally managed to arrive, it was past 7:30. I was out of breath from carrying those 2 heavy suitcases, but happy to finally be there. I walked up the 3 steps to the entrance and gently turned the doorknob. The door wasn't locked. I opened it just a crack, hoping to surprise them. It was then that I heard it. Devon's voice, loud and clear, echoing from the dining room. "A toast to the best Christmas ever. Finally without the old man to ruin everything." I froze, my hand still on the doorknob. My heart seemed to stop for an instant. "This time we won't have to listen to the same old, boring stories," he continued, and I heard laughter. "Nor eat that awful food he brings." Chandra's voice chimed in, followed by more laughter. "Grandpa tells the same things 1,000 times. He's such a hassle." I recognized the voice of Zoe, my 12-year-old granddaughter. "And he's always asking about school." What a pain. Even little Caleb, just 9 years old, chimed in. The floor seemed to vanish beneath my feet. Every word was like a knife in my chest. They hadn't called to find out why I was late. They weren't worried. They were celebrating my absence. I closed the door carefully, making no noise. I didn't want them to know I was there, that I had heard everything. I went down the steps slowly, my legs trembling, the 2 suitcases weighing a ton. Tears were already streaming down my wrinkled face, but I bit my lip to keep from sobbing. I walked down the sidewalk, with no fixed destination. The streets were decorated with Christmas lights. Families passed by, smiling. Christmas music played from the houses. Everything seemed to mock my pain. I found a bench in the Main Street Park and collapsed. I cried there, like I hadn't cried since Grace died. I cried for all the overtime hours I worked to pay for Devon's college. I cried for the Christmases I spent alone when he chose to travel with his family. I cried for the gifts I gave that were probably tossed in a corner. I cried for the ingratitude that cuts deeper than any knife. "Are you all right, Eli?" A voice brought me out of my trance. It was Mr. Irvin, the pharmacy owner, walking his dog. "Yes, Mr. Irvin. It's just this dust that got in my eye," I lied, wiping the tears with the back of my calloused hands. "All alone on Christmas Eve, old friend?" he asked, genuinely concerned. "Sometimes you're lonelier when you're with company, Mr. Irvin." "Irvin," I replied, looking down at the envelope I held in my hands. When he walked away, I stayed there contemplating that envelope. Inside was the deed with the space already prepared for Caleb's name. A gift that represented a lifetime of work. A gesture of love that would be received by people who were celebrating my absence. It was at that moment that something shifted inside me. It wasn't anger, it was a deep sadness that transformed into determination. I pulled out my cell phone, which miraculously had a sliver of battery left, and called attorney Malcolm Young, a lawyer I had known for years, who luckily answered, even though it was Christmas Eve. "Malcolm, it's Eli. I need your help. It's urgent." I quickly explained the situation. The attorney, who had helped me on other occasions, understood the seriousness of the case. "I'll contact a process server who owes me a favor. Wait for me at your place. We'll be there in about an hour." While I waited, sitting on that park bench, watching the stars begin to appear in the sky, I thought about everything I had lived through. The sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the dreams I nurtured. I thought about Grace, and what she would say if she were here. "Nanda," she'd tell me, using my old nickname. "You gave everything you could. It's not your fault." An hour passed. My cell phone rang. It was Attorney Young, saying they were on their way to Devon's house. I got up from the bench, resolved, and walked over there. I arrived a few minutes before them and stood across the street, watching the house all lit up, hearing laughter and music. Attorney Young's car parked, and he got out along with the process server, a man with a serious demeanor and a briefcase in hand. I gave them a discreet signal and stayed where I was. I wanted to see everything, but I didn't want to be seen yet. The two men rang the doorbell. The music lowered. Quick footsteps. The door opened and I saw Devon, wearing a Santa hat and holding a glass of wine. "Mr. Devon Sterling?" the process server asked. "Yes, that's me. What's wrong?" My son looked confused. "I have a court order. By legal determination, you and your family must vacate this property within 24 hours. I saw Devon's face go pale, the glass nearly slipping from his fingers. "What?" "There must be some mistake. We've lived here for years," he stammered. "There is no mistake," Attorney Young intervened, handing him some papers. "The property is registered in the name of Mr. Elijah Sterling, who is the rightful owner and is requesting immediate vacancy. Here is the documentation." Chandra appeared in the doorway, followed by the children. "What's going on, Devon?" she asked, alarmed. "They're saying we have to leave the house in 24 hours, that the house belongs to my father," he replied in his shaky voice. "That's absurd. Your dad gave us this house," Chandra exclaimed, outraged. "Mr. Sterling allowed you to reside here, but he never transferred the property," the lawyer explained. "Legally, you are occupants by the mere benevolence of the owner, who is now revoking that permission." That's when Devon saw me standing across the street. Our eyes met. He handed the papers to Chandra and ran toward me. "Dad? Dad! What does this mean?" he shouted, approaching. I stood in silence, looking at this man who was once the little boy I carried on my shoulders, the child for whom I sacrificed so much. "Dad, you can't do this. It's Christmas Eve, for God's sake, he pleaded. It was then that I finally spoke, with a calm I didn't know I could possess in that moment. Now this is the best Christmas for me, Devin. Finally, without ungrateful people to ruin everything. His eyes widened as he heard his own words echo back. You heard? He stammered. Every word, I replied, my heart heavy. Every laugh, every celebration of my absence. Dad, I didn't mean that. It was just a stupid joke. Desperation was evident in his voice as he tried to justify himself. Jokes reveal truths, son. And the truth is, I am not welcome in your life. So, I will no longer bother you. Chandra appeared with the crumpled papers in her hands, her eyes red with anger. You miserable old man! How can you do this to your own family? Where are we going to live? Did you think about your grandchildren? She screamed, attracting the gaze of neighbors who were beginning to peer out their windows. I thought about my grandchildren for 20 years. While you were teaching them to despise me, I answered without raising my voice. And as for where you'll live, I suggest you use the money you saved all these years living rent-free in my house. Devin fell to his knees on the sidewalk. Dad, please, it's Christmas. Don't do this, he begged, tears streaming down his face. I looked at him, at the house, at the children watching, frightened, from the doorway. A part of me wanted to give in. I wanted to hug my son and say everything was fine. But another part, perhaps wiser, knew that some lessons need to be hard to be learned. Christmas is a time for truth, son. And the truth is, you reap what you sow, I said, turning around and walking slowly away, leaving behind Chandra's screams and Devin's sobs. That night, I slept in a hotel downtown, a simple, clean place. I couldn't eat anything. My stomach was too twisted up from everything that had happened. I stayed up, watching the Christmas lights twinkle in the city, thinking about how life turns on a dime. The next morning, Christmas Day, I woke up early. I hadn't slept well, but I felt a strange peace, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I had coffee at the hotel and went for a walk through the nearly deserted city. My cell phone rang several times during the night and the morning. They were calls from Devin, messages pleading, threatening, negotiating. I didn't answer any of them. I needed time to think, to decide on the next step. I walked to St. Michael's Church, where the Christmas service had already ended. I went inside and sat on an empty pew. The silence was comforting. I sat there looking at the nativity scene set up on the altar, thinking about life and the decisions we make. That's when I felt someone sit down beside me. It was Ms. Charlotte Char Lewis, the former principal of the school where Grace used to teach. My goodness, Eli, what a surprise to find you here, alone on Christmas, she commented, adjusting her glasses on her wrinkled face. Sometimes chosen solitude is better than forced company, Char, I replied. I heard what happened. News travels fast in a small town, she said with a sigh. The process server is married to my niece. I nodded, not knowing what to say. Part of me was ashamed of the scandal. Another part felt it was necessary. You know, Mr. Sterling, I have a problem at the city's youth shelter. I volunteer there, as you know. Yes, you've always been very dedicated, I commented, remembering that after retiring, Char had started coordinating volunteer work at the small shelter. We're about to lose the building. The rent went up, and the city council says they can't help anymore. We have 15 children who could be homeless next month, she explained, sadness in her voice. I looked at her, and something clicked inside me. 15 homeless children. Children who, unlike my son and grandchildren, truly had nothing and no one. Sure, I have an idea. Could you come with me to the notary tomorrow? In the days that followed, I spent a lot of time at the shelter, getting to know the children, listening to their stories. There were babies all the way up to 16-year-old teenagers. Sad stories of abandonment and loss, but also stories of hope and resilience. I saw in their eyes a genuine gratitude for every small gesture. A piece of candy, a story told, a hug. A week after Christmas, Devin showed up at the hotel where I was still staying. He looked worn out, with deep dark circles under his eyes and an unshaven face. "Dad, we need to talk," he said when the receptionist let him come up to my room. "Sit down, son," I offered, pointing to the one simple chair in the room. "Dad, I came to apologize," he began, his voice choked. "What I said that night was awful. I don't know what came over me. I was drunk, frustrated with other things. Devin, it wasn't just that night," I interrupted calmly. "It was years of small slights, of last-minute cancellations, of excuses not to visit. That night was just the last straw." He bowed his head, unable to meet my eyes. "I know, Dad, and I deeply regret it. I didn't know how to appreciate everything you did for me, for us." "Where are you living?" I asked, changing the subject slightly. "At Chandra's mom's house, cramped in one room. She is not happy about the situation at all," he replied with a tired sigh. "The kids are confused. They don't really understand what happened." "And Chandra?" I asked, though I could guess the answer. "She's furious with you. She says horrible things I can't even repeat." I shook my head thoughtfully. "Son, I didn't do this to punish you eternally. I did it to teach you a lesson about gratitude and respect. I think I learned my own part, too." His face lit up with hope. "You're going to let us move back into the house?" "No, Devin. That part won't change," I replied firmly. "The house is no longer mine to give or take away." "What? You sold it?" he asked, confused. "I donated it to the city's youth shelter. The deed was transferred yesterday." He stared at me, incredulous, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You donated our house to a shelter?" he repeated, stunned. "Yes. Those children need it more than you do, and unlike you, they are grateful for a roof over their heads, a plate of food, a little attention." So Devin ran his hands over his face in shock. "But Dad, it was our house, the place where we raised our children. It was my house, son, that I allowed you to use out of love, a love that was not valued." He was silent for a long moment, processing the information. "And what about us? What's going to happen to us now?" he finally asked. "You are adults with education and good health. You'll find a way, just like so many others," I replied, not harshly, but with conviction. "As for me, I've found a new purpose." I told him about my volunteer work at the shelter, about how the children had taken to me, about how useful and valued I felt. I told him about the plans to expand the place now that they had a big, well-located house. "Are you going to live there?" he asked, surprised. "Not exactly. I rented a small apartment 2 blocks away. I spend the whole day there, helping in any way I can. I'm even teaching the teenagers basic finances and management." Devin looked at me with a mix of regret and admiration. "Dad, I know I messed up bad. Can I at least bring the kids to see you once in a while?" I thought for a moment before answering. "You can, son. Your children will always be my grandchildren, and they will always be welcome. But on one condition. It has to be because they want to see me, not out of obligation." He nodded, understanding the message. "I'm going to work to earn back your trust, Dad. I don't know how long it will take, but I'll try." Time will tell, son. Time will tell. When he left, I was left thinking about how life turns. That terrible Christmas Eve had transformed into a beginning. One door had closed, but many others had opened. In the following months, the transformation of the house was impressive. What was once a home for one family now housed 15 children, 3 full-time caregivers, and a teacher. The room that was Caleb's became a dormitory for 4 boys. The garden where Chandra cultivated her prized roses now had a community vegetable patch and a small playground. The entire city mobilized when they heard about the donation. Merchants donated furniture, appliances, and school supplies. The story of the old man who donated his house to the shelter after being disrespected by his son became almost a local legend. Some saw me as a hero, others as vengeful. But everyone respected the gesture. The children at the shelter adopted me as a kind of collective grandfather. They called me Grandpa Eli, and they ran to hug me when I arrived every morning. I told them stories, taught them old games, and helped them with their homework. For the first time in years, I felt truly necessary, genuinely loved. One day, almost 6 months after that Christmas, I was sitting on the porch of the house, now the new Dawn Youth home, watching the children play in the yard when I saw a familiar car pull up. It was Devin with Zoe and Caleb in the back seat. "Grandpa!" Caleb shouted, running toward me as soon as he got out of the car. Zoe followed, more contained but also smiling. I hugged my grandchildren tightly, feeling a lump in my throat. How I had missed them. "I brought the kids to spend the afternoon with you, if that's okay," Devin said, standing a few feet away, respecting my space. "Of course it is," I replied, smiling at my grandkids. "Come meet Grandpa's new friends." It was a magical afternoon. Caleb and Zoe played with the children from the shelter. They ate the cake that Ms. Josephine, the volunteer cook, had made and listened to my stories along with the others. When it was time to leave, Zoe hugged me tight and whispered, "I'm sorry, Grandpa, for what I said on Christmas. I didn't mean it. I miss you." Tears came to my eyes. But these were different from the ones I shed that Christmas night. These were tears of healing, of reconciliation. "It's all right, my sweet granddaughter. Grandpa understands, and Grandpa misses you too." Devin watched the scene from a distance, his eyes watery. When the children returned to the car, he approached me. "Dad, can I bring them more often? Maybe next weekend?" "Of course you can, son. This house will always have its doors open for them, and for you too, when you're ready." He nodded with a small smile. "We're moving, Dad. I got a better job in Atlanta. Chandra is still hurting, but little by little, things are getting better. I'm happy for you, son, truly." When they left, I stood there watching the car drive away. The pain still existed, but it was no longer so sharp. In its place, something new was growing, a deeper understanding of what truly matters in life. It's incredible how life changes in the blink of an eye, isn't it? Here I am, almost 2 years after that Christmas that turned my life upside down, sitting on the porch of the house that I once thought to leave to my grandchildren, but which is now a home for nearly 20 children. Time passes differently when you find a new purpose. It feels like only yesterday I was crying alone on that park bench. If anyone had told me on that painful night that I would find a new family, a new reason to live, I would have laughed in their face. But that's exactly what happened, in one of those turns that only life knows how to take when you least expect it. The New Dawn Youth Home, as Ms. Char named it, in a touching ceremony that brought together half the city, became a model in the region. With the help of the community and some hard-won support from the municipal government, we managed not only to keep the place running, but to expand. We built 2 new classrooms in the back, a library full of donated books, and a computer lab that we secured through a project with a technology company from Atlanta. The children now have tutoring sessions, art workshops, and even music lessons with Mr. Adalberto, who comes twice a week to teach guitar and flute. And me? Well, I found my place in this world. I'm the official treasurer of the shelter. I look after the accounts with the same zeal I once used for my customs documents. I organize donations, keep the paperwork up to date, and handle the reports for the city. My experience as a federal customs agent helps a lot with this. After all, if I could handle import and export bureaucracy, I can handle any red tape, right? But what truly fills my heart is being their Grandpa Eli. The old man who tells stories after dinner, who teaches them to fly kites on breezy Sundays, who treats a scraped knee with the seriousness of a doctor and the tenderness of a grandfather. I created a routine that gives meaning to my days. I wake up early. I drink my black coffee while watching the sunrise from the window of my apartment, which is 2 blocks from the shelter. I arrive at 8 on the dot, just in time to see the children eating breakfast before school. I always have a word of encouragement. Hope you do well on that test today, or remember to pay attention in math class. Small gestures that make a huge difference in their lives. In the afternoon, when they return from school, I help with homework. I have patience I didn't even know I possessed. I explain the same multiplication problem 10 times if necessary, until I see that little spark of understanding. In the child's eyes, it's a priceless satisfaction. As for Devin and his family, things gradually fell into place, like water finding its way through the stones. They moved to Atlanta as planned. At first, it was only him who brought the children to visit me once a month. It took Chandra longer, almost an entire year, to speak to me again. When she finally came, she brought a red velvet cake with cream cheese frosting, which she knew I liked from the days when Grace used to make it for me. She didn't apologize with words, but that cake said a lot. We, black folks, are sometimes like that. We have trouble with words, but we speak through gestures. Last Christmas, I received a surprise invitation to spend the holiday with them in Atlanta, in the new apartment they managed to buy after much sacrifice. I confess, I hesitated. The memory of that other Christmas still hurt, though less. The words, "Finally, a Christmas without the old man to ruin everything," echoed in the corners of my memory. But I decided to go, thinking that life is too short to nurse grudges. Age teaches us that holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It was a simple Christmas, without big parties, but it was sincere. Devin insisted on giving me the seat of honor at the table. Chandra made an effort with dinner, cooking dishes she knew I liked. The children had made sweet Christmas cards with drawings and affectionate phrases. When Devin raised his toast, he said words I will never forget. To my father, who taught me the hardest and most necessary lesson of my life, the lesson of gratitude. Dad, forgive me for only understanding the value of what you did when I lost everything. Thank you for still allowing us to be a part of your life. I cried. I won't deny it. But they were different tears from the ones I shed alone on that park bench. They were the tears of someone who had made peace, not only with his son, but with himself. Someone who understood that sometimes you have to lose to gain. You have to break something down to rebuild something stronger. The most interesting thing is that my relationship with my grandchildren strengthened after all this. Perhaps because they now see me through different eyes, not as the tedious grandpa who tells the same stories, but as someone who has principles, who made a difference in the lives of other children. Zoe, now 14, even did a school project about me, telling the story of the shelter. My Grandpa, the Man Who Turned Pain into Hope, was the title. She got an A and a special commendation from the teacher, who asked permission to use it as an example for other classes. Caleb, always quieter, has another way of showing affection. Every time he comes to visit, he brings a new drawing for the shelter. They are colorful, cheerful drawings that adorn the walls of the classrooms. In the last one, he drew a figure with white hair in the middle of many smiling children. Below, he wrote in crooked letters, Grandpa Eli and his big family. That drawing is worth more than any apology. Life at my age has those things. You think you've lived everything, that there are no more surprises. And suddenly, destiny flips the table. At 73, when many of my friends are settled in their routines, complaining about backaches and failing memory, I found a new purpose that rejuvenated me from the inside out. Last week, I received news that filled me with pride. Tariq, one of the young men from the shelter, passed the entrance exam for engineering at North Carolina A&T. He's 17. He came here when he was 15, after his mother died of pneumonia and his father disappeared. A hard-working boy who just needed an opportunity. He studied at night after working all day at a mechanic's garage. Many times, I stayed up with him, keeping him company, serving him strong coffee when sleep hit hard. And to think that this opportunity came, in part, from that painful Christmas night. Life has its ironies, doesn't it? The day the exam results came out, Tariq came running to show me on his phone. He threw his arms around my neck. Pops, I never would have done it without you, he told me. I told him the merit was all his dedication, his willpower, but inside, I confess, my chest swelled with fatherly pride. Sometimes what seems like a tragedy is just the beginning of something better. Of course, it wasn't easy. There were nights when I wondered if I had done the right thing, if I hadn't been too severe with my only son. Nights when I looked at Grace's portrait on the nightstand and silently asked, "Did I do right, baby? Would you approve?" But then I would hear the children's laughter in the morning, see the progress they were making, and I knew that, in some mysterious way, everything had happened as it should. There were challenges, too. Running a shelter is no easy task, even with so many dedicated volunteers. There were tough moments, like when Lucas, a 16-year-old, ran away for 3 days. We mobilized the police, the neighbors. We searched the whole city. When we finally found him sleeping at the Greyhound terminal, he threw himself into my arms crying, saying he had gone to look for his dad in another city, but regretted it halfway there. "I realized I already have a father here," he told me. I confess, I cried with him. Ms. Char always says I was an angel sent at the right time. I tell her that I was the one who was saved. These children gave me a reason to wake up every day with a smile on my face, even when my knees ache and my back complains. They gave me a reason to keep going when loneliness could have swallowed me whole after that Christmas night. I've learned so much in these last few years. I learned that family isn't just a matter of blood, but of heart, that the strongest bonds are the ones we choose to build day after day. I learned that it is never too late to start over and to reinvent your own life, that as long as there is breath in your lungs and clarity in your mind, there is the possibility of making a difference. I also learned about forgiveness, not the superficial forgiveness of saying, "It's all fine," while the heart still bleeds, but the true forgiveness that comes after processing the pain, learning the lesson, the forgiveness that frees not only the forgiven, but primarily the forgiver. And perhaps the most important lesson. I learned that gratitude cannot be demanded, it must be earned. I spent years resenting that my son didn't value my sacrifices, but I forgot to teach him the value of those sacrifices. In a way, I failed as a father just as much as he failed as a son. A painful break was necessary for both of us to grow, each in his own way. Today, when I look back at that Christmas night, I see not only the pain of rejection, but the beginning of a journey that brought me here. A journey that gave meaning to my later years, that transformed me from a bitter old man trapped in unfulfilled expectations into someone who found purpose in service to others. Next month, Devin and the family are coming to spend a weekend with me. We're going to have a cookout here in the shelter's backyard with charcoal barbecue, just like we used to do in the good old days. The children are already excited to meet my other grandchildren, as they call them. Maya, 8 years old, already announced that she's going to show Zoe the doll collection she was given. Jamal, 10, challenged Caleb to a game of the video game. We installed it in the recreation room. I think it's going to be a good meeting of worlds. And the house, that house that was the source of so much pain, that house I once dreamed of passing on to my grandson, but for which life had other plans, is now a place of joy, of hope. The rooms that once housed one family now house multiple dreams. The garden where I once planted roses for Grace now has a community vegetable patch where the children learn to grow their own food. The walls that witnessed that cruel toast now resonate with innocent laughter and plans for the future. The other day, Chloe, 6 years old, the smallest in the shelter, took my hand and led me to the room she shares with 3 other girls. She pointed toward the window and said, "Grandpa Eli, we can see the stars at night from here. We can make a wish, right?" I told her yes, that the stars were there exactly for that, so we never stopped dreaming. Then she secretly told me that every night she asks the brightest star for me to be her grandpa forever. "You don't need to ask the star for that," I replied, my voice breaking. "That is already true, right here in my heart." It's funny how life turns, isn't it? Who would have thought that the worst night of my life would transform into the beginning of the best chapter? Who would have thought that the pain of ingratitude would lead me to find so much genuine gratitude? That the son who disrespected me would teach me, through that disrespect, to find children of the heart? If I could go back in time and talk to that old man crying alone on the park bench, carrying 2 heavy suitcases, one with lovingly prepared food, the other with carefully chosen gifts, including the deed to a house, I would tell him, "Hang in there, Eli. What seems like the end is just the beginning. The pain you feel today will transform into purpose tomorrow. The tears you shed now will water the seeds of a joy you cannot even imagine. But maybe it's better this way. Maybe we need to pass through the dark valley to appreciate the light that comes after. Maybe the wounds are necessary for growth, just as pruning is necessary for the rose to bloom stronger in the spring. Maybe I needed to lose one family to gain another, much bigger and more diverse. Today, at 73, with more wrinkles on my face and less hair on my head, the few remaining completely white, I feel more alive than ever. I have a son who learned the value of gratitude the hard way. I have grandchildren who look at me with renewed respect. And I have almost 20 adopted sons and daughters who call me grandpa from the heart, not out of obligation. In the end, I think I was blessed twice in life. First with the family I built alongside my grace. Then with this family that destiny gave me when I least expected it, when I thought there was nothing left for me but loneliness and bitterness. I don't know how much more time I have left in this life. No one knows at 73. Every birthday is a conquest, every sunrise a gift. But I know that every day is an opportunity to make a difference in someone's life. Every smile I receive is a treasure. Every "Good morning, Grandpa Eli" is a blessing that is priceless. And when my time comes, I know I will not leave alone or forgotten. I will leave surrounded by love, by true gratitude. And in the end, that is all any of us can wish for. Thank you for listening to me until the end. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the Bernard's Truth channel. For those who watched to the end, comment the word gratitude below, and don't miss the other stories here on the channel. On your screen, you'll see two you might like. A hug from this old man who learned that as long as there is life, there is hope for better days.